Good afternoon, meteorologist DT here with a weather risk special about Hurricane Elsa. Well, tropical storm, borderline Hurricane Elsa, depending on your point of view. And we're going to talk about briefly here what it might or might not do as it comes up the southeast U.S. coast. So there's a little bit of uncertainty here and kind of presents an interesting meteorological issue, if we can call it that. And hopefully we'll be able to see exactly what's going on and get an idea here. Now, this is our latest. This is a satellite picture from, I guess, it was midday here. This would be around 1:30 in the afternoon. You can clearly see right here in the center that the low-level circulation is exposed. The entire western side of it is completely ripped of any sort of clouds or thunderstorms. You can see it off the southwest coast of Florida, southwest of the southwest coast of Florida, yeah. And then you can see, like I said, the center there is completely exposed. Another satellite picture, same sort of thing. Again, this is now also from about earlier this morning, and you can see that the center is exposed. Now, there it has been some attempts. You can see the radar signature of the thunderstorm is trying to wrap around it. So it's doing that may happen before landfall, and it looks like it's going to make landfall up here. And then what I call, this is Tallahassee here, so maybe south of Tallahassee, in the eastern part of the Florida Peninsula, where they also call it the Big Bend area, the Florida coast, the Big Bend area. So, that is where it's probably going to make landfall. And like I said, the Hurricane Center says it might make hurricane intensity before landfall. There's not much difference between 70 and 75 miles per hour, so it's very possible. Here's the latest reconnaissance. Now, interesting again here on this recon, this is as of 19Z, which of course is 2 o'clock. No, 3 o'clock this afternoon, and you can see that the center is quite exposed. You can see it very clearly there, and all the big winds, the hurricane force winds at flight level, that purple stuff is 64 to 83 knots here and here, but they're way far to the east of the center. So this is not really I'm wondering if this is even a pure tropical system at this point. It's pulling a lot of dry air. It's kind of like that Opal system back in the mid 1990s. And if you look at the latest recon, you can see again, this is from Tropical Tidbits from Levi Cowan. You can see the flight level winds here on the upper left, around up to 75 knots. And the surface winds, there's some couple of peaks close to 60, 62 knots, something like that. So it's close to hurricane in terms of the winds. And the pressure, if you look at the blue lines here in the upper left, you can see it's down to about 1,000 millibars, maybe 998, and that's pretty much what they found at 5 o'clock. So it is intensifying a little bit. And, Elsa is one of these systems where the pressures are going to be higher than they normally are for a hurricane, if it becomes a hurricane. It's just one of those systems. I mean, typically the cutoff point is around 989, 988 millibars, but, it's possible that Elsa could be one of these systems where it just constantly has higher than normal pressure and then stronger than normal winds. Now, if we look at the GFS here, this is the 12Z run. You can see this is valid here. This is going to Wednesday morning in the left-hand side. You can see it's south of the Big Bend area. Then it crashes in, passes over Tallahassee by 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And the pressure is 1,004 millibars, 1,003. Now, that's clearly too high. So we know the GFS is wrong with that. And then from there, it takes it along the southeast U.S. coast as a rainstorm, essentially a windy rainstorm. Comes up, there's Thursday, and then Carolinas, and then eastern and southeastern Virginia, southern Delmarva on Thursday night. All right, well, that's pretty typical. Now, this is the GFS from, I showed this from July 5th. This is from yesterday. And you can see that it's 1,000 millibars here off the west coast of Florida, headed for the Big Bend area. And then if we go to the next page, again, it's 1,004. So the GFS's last couple runs, initially the GFS was very bullish with the system. But the last several runs, the GFS has been downplaying it a lot. And that given the weakness of the system, how it's all fractured apart, the wind shear, all the convections on one side, the exposed low-level center, that makes sense. But the European has been doing something different. This is the 12Z European, and the 0Z run had this as well on Sunday, excuse me, on Monday. And you can see, look at that, 983. And now it's 998. Now, that may be too strong. All right, but this was valid for Wednesday. This was the Monday European model run, the 12Z run, valid for tomorrow. and it's a much stronger system. That's a solid hurricane headed for the Big Bend area of the Florida Peninsula. So maybe the Europeans detecting something here. The other models are missing. Now here's the GFS winds, maximum wind gusts, the swath of wind gusts up through Friday. And you can see, the orange stuff, off the Virginia Capes, often Outer Banks, northern Outer Banks. That's 50 knots. 55, which is pretty typical, not a surprise there. And then, you look on the coastal area, 30 to 40 knots in Wallis Island, and then down to Hampton Roads and Elizabeth City and Greenville and Fayetteville and New Bern and Morehead City and Hatteras. And then you have mid 30s in, Richmond, Raleigh, up into, Tappahannock, Salisbury, that sort of thing. That's pretty typical, not a big deal, seems very reasonable. And here's the Canadian model showing the same sort of thing. Maybe a little more common sense with the wind field here, but very close to the same thing. The Canadians looking very much the same way. And then here's the rainfall. This is the 12Z. This is today's midday GFS rainfall, 1 to 3 inches. Hampton Roads, east of North Carolina, down towards Raleigh, and then a half inch to an inch. Central Virginia, Danville, Richmond, Tappahannock, Northern Neck, St. Mary's, Colonial Beach, Salisbury, that sort of stuff. And then once you get to Virginia Piedmont, not much going on, nothing north of D.C. or in central Delaware up towards Philly. Not from this system. All right, so that's the GFS rainfall. Now here's the European. This is the 6C1 of the European. And it's something vastly different. First of all, look at the low pressure on the left-hand side here. Valid for, this would be, actually, this is for, I gotta take the time frame here. Yeah, this is, excuse me, this is be for Thursday night. Yeah, on the left-hand side. 995 millibars, very close or just to the west of Raleigh. See that? That's a vastly different system. That's much stronger. And then it's 994 over Williamsburg. It's holding together early Friday morning at 2 a.m. Then it's 991 over Salisbury early Friday morning, and then 989 east of the Delmarva, southeast of Cape May. So if anything, it's intensifying a little bit. Now what the European model is doing here is the European model is, I believe, is seeing ELSA as a hybrid system, half tropical, half coastal storm. And as a result, it doesn't fall apart like it should as it goes up the coast. That's what I think the model is showing. That's what it's telling me. And we've seen this happen before. Here's the wind field. This is the 6Z European, 0Z the same thing. Look at these winds. I mean, holy crap. These are miles, these are gusts, excuse me, knots. Okay, 70 knots in northeast of Raleigh up towards Emporia. 65, 75 knots, the Virginia Eastern Shore, Hampton Roads, Newport News, is that right? 50, 60 knots in Chesapeake, Virginia Beach. Assuming that all of it's east of Richmond. Notice at the very, very sharp line. See the green line? Look at Richmond, 29, 28, and then you go down towards Charles City. It's much higher than Williamsburg, much higher. Same thing. Down by Stony Creek, winds are much stronger. Very sharp cutoff northwest side. Look at Cape May, according to this, 50 knots, but, Millville, New Jersey, 28 knots. Georgetown, 55 knots, and in Delaware, Dover, 29 knots. Very sharp cutoff with the winds. But underneath the core of this low, it's really blowing according to the European. And that's probably overdone. I got to tell you, that's probably overdone. And we can say that because here's the 12Z European model. And you can see it's not nearly the same thing. But again, these are in miles per hour. So this is at 10 meters above the ground. There's a lot of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds in Hampton Roads and the eastern portions of the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula and the Virginia Eastern Shore, maybe touching Cape May, New Jersey, and a lot of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds in North Carolina. Notice what happens is that the wind field kind of gets weak in eastern Georgia and South Carolina, then it picks up in North Carolina. Again, I think that's because the system is transferring or transforming over to a coastal storm as opposed to, or maybe a subtropical storm, as opposed to a pure tropical system. I think that's why it's doing it, because these winds should not be increasing like that in North Carolina over Raleigh. That's a surprise there. There's a reason for that's happening. Now here's the European Ensemble. Not quite as aggressive, but still pretty strong. Stronger winds than the GFS by far. And you can see just enlarged it a little bit here. Again, notice a very sharp cutoff here of the winds between, let's say, Richmond and Williamsburg, between Dover and Georgetown, between Greensboro and Raleigh. So here you go. And the rainfall, look at that. Widespread 2 to 4 inch rains. Interestingly enough, in eastern North Carolina, they don't get that much rain. See that? Hatteras, Nags Head, Greenville, those places like that. The Albemarle Sound, Pamlico Sound, they don't get that much rain. Now, this is interesting. Here's the European Ensemble track. So you can see it coming up here. And you can see, notice the winds here. Georgia and South Carolina. All these different lows. These are the remember, the European Ensemble consists of 50 different members, right? So, and then up here in the upper right, you can see the color coding. So this blue color is 30 to 40 knots, okay? Winds, max winds. These are the gusts. So 30 to 40 knots is 35 to 45 miles per hour, okay? In eastern Georgia. And then notice you're getting some light blues there. It's kind of weakening in eastern Georgia and South Carolina. The wind field's going down. All right, that's fine. We know that's expected to happen. But look what happens here. It begins to pick up in North Carolina, Eastern Virginia, and suddenly we're getting 40 to 50 knots, which is, 45 to 55 miles per hour in Hampton Roads and the Chesapeake Bay and the Delmarva. Again, I think that's because the European says this is going to transform into kind of a subtropical or hybrid system, and I think that's why the wind fields are increasing. I could be wrong. Interesting, the UCMET, which, is the second best global model in the world, consistently, it's certainly very good tropical systems, does the same sort of thing. Okay, you think maybe the Europeans like blowing smoke up its ass, maybe it's wrong here. But if we enlarge the British model, you can see it does the same sort of thing. Look at that. 7 p.m. Thursday, south of Raleigh, east of Charlotte. You can see that 990, and then 991, just east of Norfolk and Virginia Beach. The thing's intensifying. So, my point here is not to cause, I just don't want people caught unsurprised. You look at the GFS stuff, you go 20 to 30, and then you'll see, if you see a gust of 50 or 60, you go, where the hell did that come from? And, you think, okay, it's going to be a busted forecast. So this was the ZOZ European wind gust. You can see that was very strong. I don't think that's correct. So I think, in retrospect, I think the British model is probably reasonable, and I think those winds are reasonable as well. European Ensemble, that looks reasonable here. I think the European, that looks very good. I did not post the 18Z NAM models, but it's pretty close to the Euro Ensemble. So we'll see as we get closer to if the NAM winds start coming up towards the European. You'll see that a lot. When that happens, that means you have a pretty good idea of the winds. That's been my experience. Anyway, that's the forecast. We'll see what happens. Now, other point I want to get out here, okay, if you are north and west of Richmond, it's rain at best, maybe not even much. There's nothing on the western side of this system, okay? So don't get excited in Charlottesville or Farmville or Lynchburg, D.C., the Shenandoah Valley, you're west of Raleigh, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, nothing. Relax. It's media hype. Nothing's going to happen. But on the eastern side of it, towards the coast, there's going to be some action here. It's going to be more, than just a little bit of wind and rain. The winds could be a little stronger than normal. And I just want you to be prepared for that sort of thing. Okay, that's the forecast. We'll see what happens. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you over on the Facebook page and on Twitter page.